I went into this movie with very high expectations, as the actor who played Jesus, Jim Caviezel, said that this was the best role that he had ever played. That really surprised me. And let's not forget the elephant in the room. So many articles came out against this movie. Now, there are hundreds of videos on this and controversy behind it, so I'm going to cut right to it. If you want to know whether you should see this movie, the answer is a solid yes, for many reasons. There you go, you can end the video. But if you want to know other things regarding what I think and reasons why you should see the movie, here we go. Okay, so first of all, I didn't read all those articles because I don't trust mainstream media. Whether you're on the right side of things or the left side, the information is usually swayed to push certain narratives, and that is very prevalent here. The liberal left is saying that this is some QAnon conspiracy that doesn't exist, while the right is calling their own conspiracy, saying that the left is doing their best to push down this film, regardless of its success. The truth is usually neither of those things, and I see that here. All attempts from the left to not get people to see the film have skyrocketed the film's views so much that the profit margin is well above the $100 million rate, and we're only in the first week or so. It's like Scar telling Simba not to go to the elephant graveyard, but at least Scar knew Simba would go there and planned on having the hyenas eating him. I start to think, if the left didn't want you to see this, then why are they making such a fuss? Don't they realize at this point that whatever they say not to do, conservatives are going to rally behind it? But I started thinking something else. A large portion of videos on this movie don't actually focus on the movie. There are stunning visuals, great storytelling, and Jim Caviezel's performance has got to be one of the best of his career. He has this way of putting entire paragraphs of words by simply looking at you or someone else. I used to think that when he looked at Peter in Passion of the Christ, that was Jesus that made Peter cry, but it's actually that Caviezel is such a powerful man that he could bring out such great performances with body language and facial expressions alone. As far as the main antagonist of the film, it's not the government, it's not conspiracy cover-ups, it's not even atheism. The main antagonist of the film is simply child trafficking. But are we going to address that? No. Let's spread around how the left or the government or even movie theater problems like it being too hot inside the theater were the main focus. It's like everybody is an enemy except child traffickers. And I think many need to wake up to this and realize that the valiant efforts of the film are being squandered by the red herring called conspiracy. If you don't want the government to call this a QAnon conspiracy film, then stop spreading around that the government is making a conspiracy to stop the film. It's already extremely successful, so let's just focus on doing good instead of constantly pointing out, ooh, bad people are bad, as our main material. Now, I mentioned that the antagonist of this film is child trafficking, and I mean that. This film is not some attempt by Christians to make converts. Caviezel even utters an S-word swear line a time or two throughout the film. God is only mentioned, I believe, 3 times, and none of them in the context of upping Christianity, but rather bringing awareness to how horrible child trafficking is. Tim quotes a scripture about harming children before making an arrest. He mentions that the reason he wants to do more by rescuing children instead of just arrest traffickers is because God's children are not for sale. And another character talks about why he rescues children is because he used to engage in buying prostitutes, and he was convicted by God himself when he realized that children as young as 6 years old are being introduced into such a lifestyle. That's it. The government isn't featured as a big bad either. Yes, Tim Ballard gets shut down, but that's because the type of work he's desiring to do is outside of the boundaries of Homeland Security. His superior even apologizes for not being able to help him more because there are laws that restrict them. Tim, of course, quits his job and goes about this with personal connections and funding and the help of the local government from the country he's operating in. It's just a film bringing about awareness to child trafficking, and a really good one. Now, what about the display of child sexualization? Well, the movie gets a PG-13 rating for a reason. Does this movie make children engage in sexual acts for the sake of the film? No. The closest thing you get in this movie is that they show a little girl who was sold into prostitution unwillingly because she was tricked into thinking she would become a model. She gets tossed into a hotel room and a predator sees her scared, doesn't care, and closes the shades. About 5 to 7 seconds later, the shot cuts to that girl crying in a bathtub trying to sing a song to keep herself sane from what just happened to her and what we all know just experienced. Is it heavy? Yes. But the film's job is to bring awareness to the fact that these types of things are happening every day. And while many Westerners are busy living their best lives, completely oblivious to the real issues that others are facing, even many Western Christians spending their time avoiding all kinds of suffering and persecution, even going as far as to leave Christianity when it doesn't suit their own selfish desires, we cannot deny the harsh reality that the world doesn't revolve around our enjoyment and entertainment. This film forces you to take a hard look at the fact that evil exists, and you even begin examining yourself to see what you can do better, even if being more aware is all you can do. Now, personally, I've had my own issues with being addicted to that entertainment industry, and I was reminded of how the statistics show that even the adults in that industry usually come from some type of sexual abuse early in life, and some were even trafficked into it by starting off as being forced, but then got so used to the behavior that even recording themselves for money became something worth doing. Nobody was in the kindergarten class and said, when I grow up, I want to sleep with people on camera for money. No, something happened to them and their lives became a prison as they were shattered by a crime that was committed against them, while the adult who committed the crimes against them usually run free to do it to other people. These are the types of things that those who peruse that part of the internet tend not to think about. That's someone's son. That's someone's daughter. That's someone's sister. And no parent desires their child to be on display like that. Likewise, no parent wants a child kidnapped and sold into child trafficking. But just like the adult entertainment industry, which makes billions of dollars a year, so is trafficking making billions of dollars a year. They're both directly linked, but one is celebrated and another tends to be pretended not to exist. This movie can bring about these kinds of discussions, and if a teenager is old enough to know what sexual crimes are, I recommend this movie to start a roundtable discussion. And now, I don't want to bring this up, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the hypocrisy from some articles that endorsed movies such as Netflix's Cuties, but tried to pan this film. Both films were said to be going about the same thing, but Cuties actually had children act out scenes of abuse, such as dancing in sexualized manners for their predators, and even featured child nudity. The film glamorized this rather than show the horror of it like Sound of Freedom did. To this day, Netflix has received not a dime of my money because of that. So in certain magazines and websites that wrote positive reviews of a movie that basically features crimes against children, the main antagonist of Sound of Freedom, then turn around and write bad reviews of a movie that exposes such harsh acts against children that happen all over the world, it tends to paint these people in a negative light. And I believe these only fuel the discussions going on right now. So there you have it. Sound of Freedom is the type of film that is sure to be a roundtable discussion on a very sensitive topic. It brings across the point that child trafficking is a real and serious threat that is growing and it needs to be addressed. People need to be aware of what's happening and we do need to take action. The only way that evil can prosper is if the good people sit down and do nothing to stop it. Because through the real efforts of one man, Tim Ballard, many children have been brought back to their mothers and fathers. When we recognize evil as being evil and don't allow it in our lives, only then will changes be made. Sound of Freedom is an excellent portrayal of how we can all fight against that kind of darkness.